From the gubernatorial candidate poll to James Smith to United States Representative Ralph Norman, I speak exclusively one-on-one with South Carolina Democratic gubernatorial candidate Phil Noble for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Phil Noble, it's so good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. You know, I was just telling you this off camera, but you've been making headlines recently because of all that's going on between you and your other gubernatorial candidates.
Yeah, it's a lot happening. The race is starting to heat up and get interesting.
What is it like for you, Phil Noble, the gubernatorial candidate?
Well, it's hard, it's nuts, but I'm having the time of my life. It's great fun. I really believe this stuff. You know, I believe what I'm doing. I believe in the potential of this state, and I'm passionate about it. And that passion has driven me in some ways all my life, but now it's really intense and it drives me, and it's fun and it's grueling, but you know, hey, I'm running for governor and I'm tied for the lead, so what more can anybody want, right?
Well, let me stop you there. You talk about tied for the lead.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that poll that came out from, I believe, in Michigan just yesterday.
Yeah.
You and James Smith, on the Democratic side, that is, are tied at 27%.
Yeah.
27% tells you about what about you?
Yeah. Well, what it says is really not so much about me, because I'm not so great, but it's about the message of what I'm talking about. What I've been saying is that this state has enormous potential, and we can do great things in this state, but we have a broken and corrupt and dysfunctional government in Columbia that's holding us back. And I am the candidate of change. I'm the candidate of reform. I'm the candidate who wants to do big things for this state. And the rest of them, Democrat and Republican, are sort of status quo, more or less, most of the same, you know, state house politicians and insiders. And people are just rejecting that. They're rejecting it in the Republican primary, and they're rejecting it in the Democrat primary. People want something fundamentally different in South Carolina.
You talk about Columbia, you talk about the state house politicians.
Yeah.
One of them is actually running for governor of South Carolina, and that is your opponent, James Smith.
Yeah.
I know that he made headlines recently because the Charleston Post-Courier released an article just today about all the candidates on both sides releasing their tax records from years
Right.
past. He didn't.
He didn't.
He actually said he's going to release it another date.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
And you actually said this quote, James has taken a page straight out of the Donald Trump book of political ethics. Like Trump, Smith has been endorsed by the NRA, and now he's refusing to release his income tax returns. I'm wondering if Smith is in the right party primary. While all the other candidates, 8 candidates for governors, Democrats and Republicans, have released their returns, Smith is the only candidate that has refused. The question for Trump and Smith is the same. Quote, what is he hiding? Unquote. What other questions do you have for James Smith?
Well, you know, James can speak for himself or not speak for himself. I mean, the fundamental reality is that people in politics can no longer say, well, I'm not going to tell you how I make my money. I'm not going to tell you if I'm doing business with state government. I'm not going to tell you if I got sweetheart deals. I'm not going to tell you if I'm getting paid by people I'm representing before boards and commissions. You just can't do that anymore. That's not where the American people or the people in South Carolina are. They want open, transparent government. They want government where they can trust their elected officials to know that they're doing the right thing, that they're being honest, that they're not getting paid by people to do their bidding for them. And that's what this is all about. I mean, 7 out of the 8 other candidates said, yeah, here's my income tax. And it's the same principle with Trump. Trump said, trust me, I'm not going to release my income tax. Maybe I will in the future. And we see what's happened, right? Today, just today, the FBI raided the office of Trump's attorney about his personal financial dealings and improprieties. No different than South Carolina, than Washington. You know, we've got to have politicians who are open and honest and transparent about their personal dealings, what they believe, what they're going to stand for, and just be honest with people. And, you know, if you won't be honest with people, if you won't release your income tax, and everybody else does, That says more about you than it does about everybody else.
How honest are you with candidates, with the, as a candidate with the voters?
Well, I just try to tell people what I believe and what I want to do. It's really that simple. I released all my income tax, and we're going to have lots of other disclosures in the future about my clients and about other things about my business and personal life. Not because people, want to pry into somebody's personal life, but people have a right to know who is paying you and why they're paying you. I've released all my income tax for the last 3 years. I could release them going back 20 years if people were really interested in them. But the fundamental issue is, are we going to have an open and transparent government, Democrat or Republican, or are we not?
What will a Phil Noble government look like in Columbia?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost it would be about trying to do things radically better. And I'm talking about radically better. I don't want to piddle around the edges. I don't want to try to have incremental improvements in our education. I want big and bold and audacious leapfrog jumps. I want things to be radically better, not just, a little bit here and a little bit there. I think we need to have real reform in this state, not just sort of let's make believe, say a few nice words and hope the voters will let us get by with it. No, it's about being open and transparent. It's about having big ideas and big ambitions. It's about standing up for democratic values. We've got in this country an evil, and that evil is the NRA. They are doing evil things, and they are preventing us from having common sense gun control legislation. Just basic common sense. And I am fighting tooth and nail against the NRA because they're wrong. They're just wrong. My opponent, James Smith, he's had a A+ or an A rating from the NRA 4 times. He's been endorsed by the NRA 3 times. And endorsed. You're our guy. You're supporting us. We support you. 3 times. But yet, he won't talk about it. When I confront him with it, he ignores it. He won't talk about it. If you're ashamed of what you've been doing, then why did you do it? I think it's just about being open and accountable and honest with people and not trying to hide things, not trying to say one thing when you're in the State House and something else when you're running for governor. It's just about trying to be open and honest with people. I'm no saint, but I do believe there's a certain basic level of just telling people the truth.
So what has James Smith been saying in the State House, which is different from his gubernatorial campaign?
Oh, well, I think there's a lot. I think, on the one hand, now he's saying he's for assault weapon bans and a couple other things. Fine, great. I'm glad he's for those things. But he's got a career of doing just the opposite, of supporting the NRA time and time and time and time again. That's not what I said about James. That's what the NRA said about James. James says he's for ethics reform. Well, that's a wonderful thing. Here's the first opportunity to be open and honest. Tell people where you're making money. He flunked the test. So, why should we believe him? Why should we believe him? If he's saying one thing on one day and doing something entirely different now he's running for governor. That's just the same old politics of, let me do one thing when I'm in the State House, something else when I'm running for office. That's just politics as usual. And that's wrong. That's what we've got to get rid of, politics as usual. James says, I'm for utility reform. Then why did he take tens of thousands of dollars from the utility companies and not give it back? He says, we need to clean up the money in politics. Great. But he takes tens of thousands of dollars in PAC contributions, special interest PAC contributions. I'm the only candidate, Democrat or Republican, who says I'm not taking PAC money, I'm not taking money from utilities. You got to walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk. And that's what I try to do.
And to be fair, he did respond to the whole PAC situation that's going on. He said this quote, and I believe he told us to the state newspaper, quote,
Yeah.
"I'm not running against Phil Noble. I'm running for South Carolina. He has his ideas on how to lead the state forward, and I have mine." And he said this, adding, he has a, quote, "a record to stand on. I certainly stand by my service the last several years and can respond to any question about any donations I received," unquote.
Well, ask him to donate. Ask him to respond. Why did he take money from the utility companies and then turn around and say, well, let's regulate the utility companies? He said, I want to investigate the utility companies. How are you going to take somebody's money and then say, I'm going to investigate you? Right. Give me a break. I mean, if he really wants to be transparent about it, let him give the money back. Other members of the legislature have returned the money to the utilities. Why couldn't he? Why shouldn't he? He should.
And I hope to ask for an interview with him soon, so we'll stay tuned for that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we've got to get all sides here.
Oh, of course.
But let me turn over to Representative Ralph Norman.
Oh, yeah, he's a piece of work, isn't he?
I gotta stay out of that. I have no comment. But apparently, you sent this release out basically saying this: South Carolina Democratic gubernatorial candidate Phil Noble released a statement tonight to respond to United States Representative Ralph Norman's incident today of pulling out a loaded gun allegedly at a constituent public meeting earlier today when talking about gun violence. Norman was meeting with people from a gun control group called Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, Noble said. And you said this, quote, "Let me be clear on what happened today. Ralph Norman pulled out a loaded gun, waved it around in a crowd of strangers, and then started ranting about former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was shot in the head in 2011 at an assembly event. The fact is, if he didn't have the word congressman in front of his name, he'd be undergoing a mandatory 24-hour psychic evaluation right now. And frankly, that's exactly where he belongs." And let me go to him because I actually have his statement here. It says this, and this was Indian land, South Carolina, earlier today when he was talking to media. He says, quote, "He will not apologize for pulling out his loaded gun during a meet and greet with constituents on Friday." And he says this of the request by the South Carolina Democratic Party about a SLED investigation. He says this, quote, "It's all political. I did not break any laws."
Well, just follow what he says. I do not apologize for pulling out a loaded gun at a constituent meeting. Now, wait a minute. Give me a break. Here's a guy in a room full of strangers, people, constituents, and what's he do? He pulls out a loaded gun and starts talking about, somebody shows up, I'm going to shoot him. I'm not going to be like Gabby Giffords. Wait a minute. What does our politics become when a member of Congress pulls out a gun, a loaded gun, and waves it around when he's talking to his constituency? Is that nuts or what? That's nuts. That's crazy. Is that what our politics has degenerated to? I just can't imagine anybody going, oh, well, that's okay. Yeah, what about that firearm? That's nuts. And if that's what our politics has degenerated to, he ought to be ashamed of himself. And anybody ought to be ashamed of themselves pulling that kind of tactics. That's just, I just don't even know how to respond to that.
Now, he did say it on Twitter that he safely pulled it out, and I know that he's apparently he's registered to have a gun.
Well, that's right. I got a shotgun. You don't see me walking around in a constituent meetings pumping my shotgun, waving it around, talking about, come after me and I'm going to shoot you back. That's not politics. That's not what we in America and we in South Carolina ought to be about. If we can't sit down, Democrat and Republican, and talk calmly and rationally about the issues involving our state, where our country needs to go, if we've got to resort to whipping out guns, loaded guns, and saying, sure, I don't apologize for that, then something is really, really bad wrong. And it's not us, it's Norman.
So from now until June, how would you in your mind sprint to the finish line?
Hard as I can go. You know, it's really about talking to folks. You know, politics is, in one sense, it's very simple. It's about saying, here's who I am, here's why I'm running, and here's what I want to do. And if you agree with that, if you agree with the basic ideas of what I'm talking about, then help me, support me, join, work, knock on doors, make phone calls, make contributions, have a house party, introduce me to your friends and neighbors. And that's what politics is about, and that's what it should be about.
Phil Noble, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. Thank you.